So recently, Joe Rogan was in the news for COVID, and it made me go back and look at his deal with Spotify. If you don't know, Joe Rogan signed an exclusive deal with Spotify where his podcast will be hosted by them exclusively on their platform. I just wanted to give my opinion on this because I think that it actually was a bad move for Joe Rogan. I think for any other podcaster, it could have been good, but when you have a podcast as big as Joe Rogan's, it's not really necessary to sign with a platform. Like, why? Because if he stayed independent, he could still make money. His show would still be profitable. At that point, you just have more freedom, you know? I just don't understand the Spotify deal. And honestly, I said the same thing about Joe Budden, you know? Like, why are you signing a deal with a company when you could just get the deal done? So I had him on. But this could be coming from my personal insight because I have been podcasting for so long and I know how much money you can make when you have your own thing to sell, you know? And most podcasters don't know this, but there's a difference between making money from your own products and getting sponsored. Now, when you're getting sponsored, it's great because the company wants to work with you, you promote them, you make money. Amazing. It's a perfect setup. But what happens is you have a limit on that sponsorship. They'll only pay you so much, right? Like there's a ceiling on that, you know, and if you want to get paid more, your show has to be worth more. You have to get more listeners, put out more episodes. You have to do more in terms of podcasting when you're getting sponsored. What I want to say is that it's convenient for a lot of people, especially if you're in the entertainment space. You know, that's the best thing for you to do is go after sponsorship. If you have a podcast about comedy, sports, you know, anything in that area, anything in entertainment, focus on getting sponsored because that's going to be your best way to monetize your show. Now, if you're on a business side, if you have a company, you have a product, you have a service, the best thing for you to do is focus on selling your own products. Your content should all be around ways you can sell your products. Now, I'm not saying every episode should be an infomercial. Please don't mistake me. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is your content should be a lead way into buying your products and services. And again, it doesn't have to be some long drawn out thing where you're selling every episode. So I'll give you an example. If I had a company that sold basketball gear like shorts and maybe basketballs or shirts and jerseys, whatever we sold, we just sold sports gear or whatever for basketball players. I would interview NBA athletes, maybe college coaches, you know, top NBA prospects. I would interview those people because having that attention, the attention they bring puts attention on my products, right? So again, it's not me selling every episode, but because I have a basketball centered business, my basketball centered podcast, they work together, right? So that's really the kind of the different sides here. But the thing with Joe Rogan is he doesn't fit in either one of those categories. He's an anomaly in the podcast space. And the anomaly in the podcast space is the show that is massive, that is just a big platform, right? A show where you could charge somebody $10,000, $20,000, even $50,000 to be a guest, and they would say yes, right? There are a few podcasts out there that have this kind of pull and leverage. Not every show has this, and I don't think every show even will. You know, that's just how things work. There are some at the top and they just dominate. That's just how it works. I believe that instead of those shows like Joe Rogan or Joe Budden going to Spotify and work with them exclusively, I think the smartest thing they could do would be to sell memberships because that's the way people will pay to access the content. Now, if you look at Joe Budden, he's doing this now with Patreon. Got to deal with them, and now he's doing it, right? So he kind of learned about working with Spotify. Now he's making his own money on the side, doing his thing with the podcast, which is, I'm pretty sure, is more profitable. It's more beneficial. Joe Rogan, on the other hand, I think could have made even more money had he stayed independent. So I want to give you a little math problem here. If you look at his stats for his podcast in YouTube, Joe Rogan is making ridiculous downloads. Like, it's ridiculous the views and downloads that every episode gets. I mean, at least 500,000. Most of the time, it's upwards of 1 million. Like, even the clips get millions of views. Like, that's how powerful the podcast is. So let's just assume the listenership, let's just say it's 1 million people a month. Let's just say that. If Joe Rogan were to charge $8 a month, you know, that's a pretty good price to access some exclusive content. You could charge more, obviously, but $8 a month is a fair amount. I think most people would pay $5 to $8 a month to hear Joe Rogan's content, right? Most people would pay that. Would you pay that? Let me know in the comments down below. That's just a question for the video. Like, what would you pay? Access exclusive content. And if you wouldn't pay $5 to $8 for Joe Rogan's content, is there any creator out there that you would pay to access exclusive content from? Let me know in the comments below. I want to know your answer. I'm really curious about that. Let's just say at that $8 a month mark, Mark, Joe Rogan was able to convert 150,000 people, right? And again, that sounds like a lot. It sounds like an insane amount of people, but it's not, because again, millions of people are listening every month. Millions of people are viewing every video, right? So would it really be that hard to get 150,000 people? I don't think it would be. I really don't. And again, you're not asking for $100 a month. That would take your conversion rate super low, obviously. But the fact that it's $8, you could get a nice chunk of change for that, $8 a month for 150,000 people would be $1 million. Well, $1.2 million to be specific. Now that's monthly. That's the monthly amount if it was $8 a month for 150,000 people. Now, again, I know you're probably thinking that's a lie and that's absurd. It's really not. Because again, if we split up the people, because something else you got to think about is the people that are listening on the podcast are not watching on YouTube. So those are, honestly, they can be two separate audiences. So you double the listener count. Let's say it's about 5 million people listening every single month from YouTube and the podcast. Now, 150,000 out of 5 million isn't too crazy, right? Now, if you take that yearly, that's $14.4 million a year, right? And I say all of this to say that
Apple
monetizing your podcast through subscriptions,
which allows you to create premium content.
That is one of the best things you can do for your brand, because you
your shows.
control how much money you make at that point. You control the content you put out. You control the audience out. You control everything. It's actually way easier to make money that way, because with sponsors, it's really audio control. They can up and say, well, we don't want to work with you. We don't want to renew the contract. With offers and stuff, that's your products and your content, your tools, whatever. That is something you got to sell, right? You got to put a lot of effort into that. With paid subscriptions, people are paying for extra content. So if you talk about sports, it could be for your analysis and your breakdown. If you talk about music, it could be for your personal review or something, or it could be for you reviewing their music or something like that. So many different ways you can do paid subscriptions. And I think that's the lesson here too, is to be creative with that. Don't just say, oh, we're just going to put out more episodes. Like, yeah, that works, but what other episodes are you going to put out? Be specific. Be creative. That's what's going to help you connect with the audience more and eventually make more money. I guarantee this will work for a lot of people. This is one of the best income strategies for podcasters right now. And I just wanted to use Joe Rogan as like the massive example of what's possible. Now, obviously, all of us don't have big audiences like that. And your subscription might start really small. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You may start off with 10 people and then go to 15 and then 23. But over time, you can build up a massive audience and a massive community that are paying you a couple bucks a month. So if you have not started monetizing your podcast through subscriptions, think about that, man. Just think about what's possible if you take the time to put together something amazing for your audience. I'm Coach Chris. I'll see you next time.